Harry's Wife, part 96.13. Down the Pan, the many failures of Harry's Wife. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I explained to you all about narcissism, the behavior of the narcissist, and how those behaviors manifest in the world that you know. News recently arrived, of course, that Harry's Wife's Netflix show had been cancelled. And I explained how that would make her feel in part 96.11. However, this is part of the downward spiral that I identified in parts passim with regard to the fact that there were a variety of things that weren't working for her, that had gone against her. And, as a consequence of this, a rather useful article has appeared in NZ Herald, written by Daniela Elsa, who is, of course, of news.com.au. And this charts the fact that Harry's wife is facing so many things that had essentially gone down the pan, gone down the crapper. The article headlined, Harry's Wife's Netflix show cancellation reveals uncomfortable truth. I'm going to take you through the article and then explain the applicability of how this fits with her narcissism. When Harry's wife, former Suits star, blogger and one-time designer of a mid-priced clothing range for a mid-range department store, got mid-range written all over her, hasn't she, married Prince Henry Charles Albert David, she made history. Not just because she was the first woman of colour to marry into the royal family, or that she was the oldest Windsor bride, but for one Gloria Steinem-approved reason. She was the first self-made millionaire to have made the unthinkable leap from Civvy Street to HRH Dom. I'm not quite sure that she was a millionaire, but let's run with that. Unlike Sophie Rhys-Jones, Camilla Parker Bowles and Kate Middleton, the three Windsor brides who preceded her up the aisle, Harry's wife was a woman who had carved out a successful career and had the bank account to boot when she got a title and a loaner tiara. Her decision to join the palace ranks was a 21st century feminist reimagining of the Cinderella Story. Now, everyone clutched their copy of The Female Eunuch briefly in pride. Done? Good. Because here is where this supposed fairy tale takes a dramatic turn for the worse. Because the question we are asking is, has Harry's wife's US career totally flopped? On Monday, news broke that Pearl, the animated series the Duchess of Sussex had been working on for Netflix as part of the $140 million deal she and Harry have with the streaming giant, has been axed. Now, sure, the streaming behemoth has canned a slew of series from big names in the last week, making the Duchess just another casualty of the company's stock price woes. And yes, the company's PR machine swung into action, saying that they still consider Archwell Productions a valued partner. But widen the lens, step back, and a discernible and concerning pattern emerges. Pretty much every one of Harry's wife's various professional endeavours since decamping from royaldom has been a bit of a failure. Now you might ask, why have those professional endeavours been a bit of a failure? First of all, as I've repeatedly explained, she actually has no inherent talent. She's a mediocre actress at best. She can't write. She can't sing, as far as I'm aware. She has no she has no major charisma. There's some, but it's not extensive. And that charisma, to the extent that it exists, is regularly extinguished or diminished by her behaviours. She is unable, as a consequence of the flip-flopping of her narcissism, to stay the course with regard to anything. One moment she's a bananatarian, the next that she's an author, the next that she's a politician. She doesn't stay the course, which is typical of many mid-rangers, and their absence of accountability to see something through to conclusion. She has no discernible talent other than being an actress, and perhaps also doling out lashings of spicy poontang. Alongside this, she's unpopular with many people. She wasn't unpopular to begin with, apart from a few swivel-eyed nut jobs, but has become increasingly unpopular based upon her own behaviour, the exhibition of her sense of entitlement, lack of accountability, and her treatment of people around her. Yes, there are many conspiracy theories that are associated with her, and we can dispense with those, but there is also clear and obvious evidence, which I have explained in parts passim, that demonstrates her narcissism and the unpleasantness of her behaviour. Whether it's throwing tea over somebody at the governor's house in Australia, to making a little girl cry at a dress fitting, to pulling Harry away from friends and family, and thereafter giving him the sustained devaluation in the United States. Whether it's the smug appearance, the death stares that have been doled out towards Kate Middleton, we have seen repeatedly the various facets of her narcissistic behaviour in action. Thus, her unpopularity has stemmed from one person, and one person her alone, herself. This combination of a lack of innate talent, an inability to stay the course with regard to that which she wants to do, spreading herself too thinly in a desperate attempt to draw in those residual benefits and assert control, and her growing unpopularity, has caused her various professional endeavours, since decamping from royaldom, to have been a bit of a failure. The article continues. In June 2020, it was announced that Harry and Harry's wife had signed on to the Harry Walker Agency for speaking engagements. Neither has undertaken any sort of headline conference event or corporate gab fest. In September of the same year, the Sussexes announced their megawatt deal with Netflix, reported to be worth around $140 million. In the 21 months since then, they have only announced 2 shows, her animated one and a documentary about his sporting championship for wounded military service personnel called The Heart of Invictus. Harry's Wife series has now obviously been given the chop. I would point out in the same time period, slightly less, I've created 2,600 videos. In December 2020, it was revealed that they had also signed on with Spotify. We will get our first real taste of the Sussexes' podcasting prowess in the coming months with the debut of Harry's Wife ineptly named Archetype series, the announcement of which was greeted with about as much enthusiasm as Prince Edward rolling up to give a pep talk at a young offenders institution. Then there was The Bench, Harry's Wife's debut literary foray. A children's book, it was published in July last year, and the same month landed on the New York Times bestsellers list for a scant 3 weeks. It basically made a brief blip on the publishing landscape before disappearing from view. By contrast, a number of other picture books on the list at the same time as The Bench in 2021, including Dragons Love Tacos and The Day the Crayons Quit, that would have Harry crying, of course, are both still on the bestseller list now. In September, Harry's Wife still appeared to be trying her damnedest to gin up interest in the title, reading it to a class of Harlem schoolchildren in full view of the press. Come October, and she was still at it, recording a YouTube video of her reading it, an effort which has been viewed 474,000 times. By contrast, the Queen's speech from last Christmas has been viewed 917,000 times, and that might be one of the dullest things I have had the misfortune of watching. Then there was her milestone 40th birthday project, a charitable mentoring initiative called 40 by 40. It was announced with a headline-grabbing video showing Hollywood A-lister Melissa McCarthy and a cameo performance from Harry demonstrating his juggling skills. You'll recall memorably, he was on the outside looking in, part of his devaluation. The launch garnered global publicity and coverage only for the whole thing to disappear. Talk about going out with a whimper, not a bang. The news section of Sussex's Archwell website has not mentioned the project since then. The thing is, look back at the 2 years since Harry and Harry's Wife landed on US soil to embark on their exciting new lives, and the Duchess has not nudged up a single discernible win or clear-cut success in a professional sense. Back in 2020, the Sussexes were sizzlingly hot property, who seemed to have Hollywood, Wall Street and Silicon Valley at their feet, and a vast fortune was theirs for the making and talking. Sadly today, the Duchess is looking like a busted flush. Harry's wife doesn't really have a brand. You feel that she's sort of grasping somewhat at whatever is the kind of Twitter caring of the moment, royal biographer and insider Tina Brown said in an interview with the Washington Post last week. You know, it's vaccinations, it's Ukraine, it's women's rights, it's hey, my 40th birthday, let's have a mentoring scheme. Nothing is really going anywhere for Harry's wife. And that's indicative of the type of narcissist that she is. She can't stay the course. She bandwagons repeatedly, but then another bandwagon rolls into view, so she jumps on that. And then another bandwagon comes along, so she jumps onto that. And because she has a sense of entitlement and no sense of accountability, she doesn't finish off what she's started already. What is looking increasingly apparent, the article explains, is that even in the United States, Harry's wife might be a one-woman headline-generated powerhouse, but that public obsession has remained infuriatingly impossible to monetize. And this brings us to a painful truth. Without her royal connections, Harry's wife does not really matter all that much. Before Harry came along, she had never appeared on a glossy magazine cover, never had star billing anywhere, and had, according to the 2020 biography, Funding Freedom, Finding Dollars, Finding Freedom, resorted to occasionally set up a paparazzi photo here and there, or let info slit out to the press. All of that changed the minute the news broke that she was dating perhaps the most eligible bloke in the world. Then came the Sussexes' all-too-brief royal chapter, followed by their freedom years. The only thing that Harry's wife has done that has really shaken the zeitgeist in the last 2 years has been the Oprah Winfrey interview, during which she talked about the royal family. Separate Harry's wife from her Windsor ties and the question becomes, does anyone really care? However, that is also a question that applies equally to Harry. Over the weekend, veteran British broadcaster and mate of Prince Charles, Jonathan Dimbleby, gave an interview to The Times and warned that, having left royal life, they will become less and less significant as a couple. As he gets older, they will matter less, because the celebrity on which they trade will become less valuable. And therein lies the heart of the matter. What makes them so prized and marketable isn't their creativity or TV show ideas or charitable zeal or them as individuals, but who his family is. Brown recently argued that the Sussexes both completely underestimated what it was going to be like without the palace platform. They're now having to scramble for the deals in a way that anybody who is a celebrity in this kind of platformless universe has to do. That is a miscalculation that could cost Harry and Harry's wife dearly, and the further away they get from the magic of royalty, the less dazzling and commercially attractive they look. What is coming into focus is the inescapable fact that it is their status as intimately related to the Queen and the next three kings which makes them valuable to deep-pocketed corporate giants. Unmoored from the monarchy, their lustre and bankability is starting to look decidedly shaky. The couple's very literal fortunes now rest on Harry's memoir, oh dear, which will obviously largely deal with life in the royal family, and his Invictus Doco, a project he launched while a working member of the royal family. The biggest success he has achieved in the last few years was the release of his mental health TV series, The Me You Can't See, which started when he was still a frontline royal. Like it or not, all lucrative roads for both Harry and Harry's wife connect back to the royal family. The gross underestimation of the power of the monarchy links, Brown argues, is something that Diana, Princess of Wales, well done, would never have made. She didn't want to be out of the monarchy. She saw that the royal imprimatur was always going to be the best, leverage, the best convening power to promote the causes that she cared about. I don't know what she would have ever really advocated going off to live in Monte Shit Show without any of the patronages and any of the platform, Brown said. In exactly a month from today, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations will kick off in London, and Harry and Harry's wife has still not announced whether they will be attending. Regardless of whether they want to see his family or not, some good old-fashioned standing on the Buckingham Palace balcony and doing a spot of waving to the masses sounds like it would just be what their careers and bank accounts need right now. Daniela Elsa's article demonstrates the way that Harry's wife, unmoored from the royal family, and also Harry because he's on the leash, has tanked. And that repeatedly whatever she promises to do, or starts to do, doesn't come to fruition, because of the absence of actual talent and the fact that her narcissism causes her to believe that she's far more talented, far more well-liked, and far more effective than she actually is. This article is an excellent demonstration of, quite simply, the many failures of Harry's wife. Will she see all of this? No. Her narcissism will not allow her to. Yes, she'll see that things haven't happened, but her narcissism will always blame somebody else. Netflix pulled the series, Spotify, we didn't have time, 40 by 40, people didn't come up to proof that I asked them to do it, or I became busy with sitting on parental leave. The politics, I decided ultimately that wasn't for me, and the people who said they'd back me decided they wouldn't do. What about becoming a big splash in Hollywood? Well, all those A-listers, they're very cliquey and difficult to get into. It'll always be down to something else or someone else, never ever her fault, because her narcissism will never ever allow her to recognise her many failings. I explained, in parts passive, that the downward spiral had commenced. This article underpins that. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.